Nerd Reviews, and today I'd like to talk to you about A Tale of Two Families, mob families, that is, in the 2021 film that just came out today on various VOD platforms, including Amazon Prime, Witness Infection. Directed by Andy Palmer, this is another comedic take on zombie movies, this time putting it squarely in the crosshairs of the Mafia. Specifically, in this movie, we have two families that by accidental happenstance and FBI flubs were basically put into witness protection, but both of them, even though they were rival families, were also put in the same town. And with old habits dying hard and old squabbles needing to be beefed, there's all sorts of interpersonal, political mix-ups and so forth that kind of go on here, but all of it is interrupted when we are introduced to the notion of zombies. Apparently everybody in this movie eats from the same food truck that sells Italian sausage specialties, and in doing so they all become infected by something that kills them and then makes them the Walking Dead that goes and runs on rampage. Your typical zombie shit. Now, I've not really been shy about saying that in my opinion, zombie movies are a little bit played out and can honestly use a rest. The notion that we're actually having another comedic bucket dipped into this well is kind of just supporting my theory on that. But the real question is, how well did this movie actually work? Was it funny? Did it deliver? What was really special about it? Was this the next Shaun of the Dead? No, no, it wasn't. But, I mean, okay, so this wasn't a terrible, terrible movie. It wasn't the worst I've seen by far, but it really kind of did remind me of those somewhat competent, slightly chuckle-worthy, but never actually laugh-out-loud sequels to popular comedies. It's the kind of thing where when we don't have the budget or the faith in the principal actor anymore, we move on from Jim Carrey to Jamie Kennedy. It's that kind of sequel, flat and superficial and cheap quality level is kind of what permeates through Witness Infection. And I honestly think that for all of the pluses that this movie has going for it, all of it can kind of be just looked at in the mirror and turned into minuses that really work against it. Like, let's take the humor, for example. This really just kind of has a very big stereotypical Italian-American mafia kind of character study, and the whole thing about the notion of these two families interacting with one another and eating these sausage rolls and turning into zombies and so forth. I don't know, it just didn't really add anything to me in terms of the comedic element that it was really going for. A lot of it just felt very easy. It's easy to just put on an accent and play off your favorite movies with some spoof lines and quotes and references and so forth, but real comedy, the deeper stuff, is a lot more difficult. And in my opinion, one of the best things about mob comedies specifically is the juxtaposition between the mafia environment and the comedic elements that encompass it. And you don't obtain that contrasting element by softening one of them up. You harden one of them. The mob elements of this needed to be really and truly a testament to the mafia lifestyle without comedic over-the-top embellishments. Then when you have actors and characters and so forth that are playing their mob roles straight and then encountering the oddball zombie world and the humor that kind of encompasses that, then you have the colliding of worlds, and that juxtaposition really allows the humor to develop naturally from there. And this movie just didn't really want to go that route. It wanted to go for the easy, stereotypical, slapsticky shit. Moreover, let's just go ahead and talk mob and zombies for a minute, because I honestly think that this really missed the mark on that level too. We kind of had this whole thing with the sausage rolls infecting people, which, okay, fine, I guess, but for me, the idea of having a mafia and, zombie movie was more interesting in the notion of zombies. Like, for me, the more interesting question is, in the face of a zombie apocalypse, how well would the mafia really fare? We're talking about a close-knit environment built on pride and loyalty and respect and family, and doing the really rough shit that has to be done in the name of preserving that, while also being armed to the teeth. That's an interesting little bubble there. So let's throw zombies into the mix, play it straight, and see how they collide. I think that that would have been an interesting experiment, but by simply having these Italian sausage rolls be the infection point and everybody being eating them, it didn't really have that level. Everybody just kind of got sick, became zombies, and so on and so forth. I mean, not to beat a dead horse, but one of the best things about zombies that I personally like, if they weren't kind of exhausting themselves at this point, is the thought experiments that arise from the notion of this kind of event. How well would somebody survive? How well would I survive? Would I buzz my hair off? Would I start doing some real good calisthenics? What kind of weapon would I get? Would it be a .22 rifle? Would it be a machete? Things like that kind of primal survivalist nature, and then we can take those microcosms of people and situations and events and throw that into the stew. Zombies are a setting. They are what kind of bring the conflict out and show what's really interesting about elements of society, as opposed to just being in and themselves one more superficial punchline in a movie that just can't stop making easy references. And another plus that kind of turns into a minus once you actually look at it a little deeper is the gore. This movie actually had some decent gore to it, some good practical effects. It wasn't really afraid to really lavish things up with blood and guts and so on and so forth. However, it took such a close-up camera approach with a whole lot of movements and so forth. It was like watching the horror zombie comedy equivalent of a Jason Bourne action sequence. So yeah, we had some good gore, but what did it really matter? We could have just done a close-up shot of ketchup being mixed in with some Bisquick and had the same thing. Lastly, and I know that this is kind of more of a personal thing, so I'm not really holding it against the movie, but I had a lot of difficulty getting into this because of my emetophobia. Suffice it to say, there's not a whole lot of movies that are on my I will not watch list, but Slaughtered Vomit Dolls trilogy is absolutely there. And while... Okay, spoiler alert, mildly, or more of a public service announcement for anybody else like me that suffers from emetophobia. There doesn't really show any vomiting on screen. It's more just kind of the sound and the head in the toilet kind of thing. But even so, I didn't know that at the time, and I was watching this with that fear in me and that anxiety and that tension, and all I'm watching is a bunch of people that are just having stomach gurgling, all sorts of rumbling. The sound design in this movie was pretty incredible in that regard, by the way, and sweating like crazy, just knowing that they were going to be sick. So I was basically spending 3/4 of the film just completely on edge, really just not knowing to what level they're going to show anything, if at all, especially considering that this was a comedy movie, and that has the tendency to really kind of go a little lavish if it is going to go there. Problem Child 2 can go get fucked. That film scarred me for life. But even so, like I said, that's more of just a little bit of a personal thing, but it did kind of pull me out of it, and it was just one more reason that I just honestly think that the infected Italian sausage thing was just the wrong way to go. I think that it really added a lot of anxiety for me. Again, not holding that against the movie, but it also just brought an element in there that prevented the whole interesting dynamic of the mafia and the zombies really interacting with one another in their natural environments and then butting heads, as opposed to simply just everybody in the film getting infected. So again, this isn't a terrible movie. It was competently shot. It was competently acted. Maurice LaMarche is in it. Hey, that's a plus. But at the same time, considering that this was a comedy first and foremost, I would have to admit that the number of laughs that I actually elicited from watching this film was 0. So this is a benign, competent, somewhat lackluster, very superficial comedy that really is not going to offend a whole lot of people, and is, I guess, worth a watch if you have absolutely nothing better on your plate. It's not like I'm going to dissuade anybody from watching this, so I'm not going to advocate against it, anything along those lines. And so with that being said, thank you so much for joining me here on this video. I really do appreciate all your support. Remember, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.